I'm Stefan Baumann, and welcome once again to Baumann's Tricks and Helpful Hints. Today we're going to discuss about cleaning brushes. What kind of brushes do oil painters use, and how do we actually clean them? It's a problem that has plagued artists for thousands of years. So anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy this little conversation on how to clean brushes. This morning I was going through my Patreon questions, and my students asked me a lot of questions. But one of the questions that people have that I hear a lot, both on YouTube and my Patreon site and in my classes, is how do I clean my brushes? And for years I've had all kinds of ideas. First thing, the rectified turpentine that you hear me talk about, there's nothing better to clean your brushes than just that raw turpentine that you buy at the hardware store. But that stuff will kill you. It also gets you very high, and it's one reason why the old masters were so ingenious, because they were high most of the time off their turpentine. But the thing is, you want to kind of stay away from that kind of turpentine. So we have the odorless thinners that you can purchase at Michael's. They're quite good. Gamsol is good, but it's way overpriced. The Mona Lisa brand turpentine that you buy at Michael's is actually pretty good. You can buy that by the gallons. I've had students that have had really bad lung issues actually come into my oil painting classes where we've had 15 or 20 students and they didn't complain about their lungs. So if you can keep your turpentine to the odorless thinners, the Mona Lisa or the Gamsol, and also I'll remember your medium. So like liquid has a really bad odor or smell to it. That can be lethal for a lot of people with lung problems. But if you make your medium with using the Gamsol or the odorless thinner, you can do that, and the mixture you want to use for your medium is 1 linseed oil or walnut oil or 1 stand oil, whatever oil you want, to 2 turpentine or terpenoids. The odorless terpenoid that you buy that comes in a green can, that stuff stinks worse than anything else, so don't bother with that. The water-based safe turpentine, horrible stuff, and it doesn't keep your brushes clean. But if you want your brushes clean, use that hard stuff that you buy at the hardware store, the turpentine, triple rectified turpentine. That will get your brushes clean. The problem with cleaning your brushes is that most of the brushes that we use nowadays, they're the same hairs that we use with watercolor brushes, and pretty much oil painters use bristle brushes. For the most part, they're kind of a little bit more industrious. The more expensive brushes that we use, the sables, the nylon brushes, those brushes are more expensive for people to buy. They're sometimes favored more, but they also fall apart easier. And one of the problems that you have when you're trying to clean your brushes is that you really shouldn't ever let your brushes touch water. So back in the day, we used to use like a saddle soap. There were some little containers that had soap in it, and you would wash your brush back and forth in that after you cleaned it. I also recommend at times to use Awesome, which you buy at the dollar store. That stuff will clean anything. But the problem is that oil painting brushes, the way that they're manufactured, and they've got the hairs in that little follicle thing, back in the very base of them, it's really hard to get up inside there. And when you've ever thrown turpentine into a sink, it always clings to the side. I don't know if you've experienced that, but turpentine and water don't mix. So if you're using it for your medium, or if you're using it for your painting, that turpentine doesn't do well with water. And over the years, I've always fought with that, and I said, well, use Awesome, it's great. Make sure you clean it out afterwards. I've had some students actually clean their brushes. Once they clean them out with turp, they actually use Crisco. And they actually will push Crisco in. Crisco will kind of condition the brush as it sits there all week until you're ready for them again, and you can clean them off. The Crisco is a good way to keep your brushes wet. Some artists use fabric softener as a conditioner for brushes. That actually works too. But I find the very best thing now, and especially when I do these demos, because I'm not at home, so I do these demos and then I take my brushes home, and just like everyone else, when they go to art classes, they get so busy with all the stuff that they're trying to do that they forget, oh my God, a week later I didn't clean my brushes. So, you know, this is just something I recommend doing. I do it here. I do this at home because I work late into the night and I just get tired. I don't want to go deal with my brushes. So I will actually do this too. The greatest thing an artist can have is this, oil of clove. Now, oil of clove, you got to buy this at a pharmacy. You can buy it at Amazon. It's the essence of oil of clove. It's really strong. If for some of you back in the day, if you smell it, it actually smells like ambisol, which is the stuff that you used to put on your toothaches when you had a bad tooth. And so it's the same thing. It's a numbing thing. And this oil of clove is amazing because artists use it sparingly if they want to keep their paints from drying too quickly. And this is where acrylic artists kind of, their heads go, pow. What do you mean? You want to take oil paints which are so slow to dry anyway and add a drop of oil of clove to make them even slower? Well, if you're an oil painter and you have a lot of practice, you realize that the paint drying fast is not beneficial. It's nice to have the paint stay wet as you're working over days and days. So you can constantly blend and get your central focal points and everything just right, your soft edges. So if you want to do that, you can add just a half a drop. Think about what a drop is. And then cut that in half. And put a half a drop on your paints and it will retard them just enough. It will eventually dry, but retard them just enough. Oftentimes what I do is I just take a palette knife and dip it in and just kind of shake it a little bit and drop it onto my paints. Now the more, if you're going to put it into a closed environment and you want to save your paints instead of putting them in the freezer, just take a little sponge, soak it with the oil of clove and put it into your box and it will keep all of your paints wet. Every time you use them, they'll be just really fresh. So even the vapors off of this will actually keep your paints from retarding. A lot of this stuff will actually make the artist a little high because the vapors are like, you know, and it's numbing. So I've been in front of paintings with students and I go, oh my God, I'm dizzy. And it's not a good dizzy. It's like, you know, your brain's kind of swelling up like the whole thing's on ambisol just from the fumes. So you got to really watch it with this stuff. But if I'm finishing up a painting and I've cleaned this brush as best I can in the turpenoid, which I said is not really the best for cleaning. A little bit better with that turpentine. And if you're a plein air painter, this is good. So what I do is I get a little container like this. Now, you know, this little bottle costs you about $30. So it's kind of like gold. So you want to be sure that you put it into a little container so that you kind of save it. And you want to be kind of careful with it. All you need to do is take a brush that's relatively clean. You could, sometimes I don't even get that far. I'll just like, you know, take a dirty brush and I'll just very quickly dip it. I don't rinse it off, but I just tap a little bit of oil on the top of this and that brush will stay wet for weeks just with that oil on there. And so water never has to be used on your brushes, which is the best way to go. If you can avoid putting any water on your brushes, they'll last forever, or unless you rub them to death. Sometimes we do that to brushes. We forget that they're, that they're hair, and we just kind of like rub on it. So, but the oil of cloves works good. Olive oils, you know, any oil that has a tendency not to dry would actually work, but nothing works like the oil of clove. I don't know why, but it's like it's been used for centuries. It's a wonderful thing. The olive oil, actually I know a lot of people who are allergic to turpentines will use olive oil or salad oil with some, you know, vegetable oil to actually clean their brushes instead of turpentine, wash their hands. But those oils have a habit of not drying, and when you get those into, like olive oil, into your paint, you'll have a chance of your paint actually never drying. If you think about having an oil that you put in, and it could run some funky things. The oil of clove has a tendency to dry just really slowly, and it doesn't have a lot of, you know, effects to the paint. Although there's a lot of people right now on Facebook that are saying, oh, don't use oil of clove. 250 years ago from now, it's going to turn black on you and it's going to be horrible. It's like, we might not even be around 250 years from now. And I guarantee you the paintings that you're doing today, 5 years from now, you wish you'd never done them and you want them to go away. Anyway, what I used to do is I used to always go through the process and then I would use Dawn and water, thinking, well, it's good for little chicks, it must be good for my brushes. But this is what happens, is that right at the base there, that water clings onto the turpentine, and that turpentine clings at the bottom of those hairs, and we got trouble. Because what happens is that these brushes get fatter and fatter at the base. Every time you don't quite get 100% of it out, and eventually you end up with something that's really thick out here and really thin up here, and they're unusable. Baby oil, again, you can clean with baby oil, you can salad oil like we said before, but it does have a tendency to not want to dry at all. And so if you get some of that into your paint again, you're going to have a spot on your canvas that doesn't dry. And so you'll go over it and you varnish it and weird things happen. So that you want to have an oil that will eventually dry. But that's why we like using the clove oil. It's so slow, but it will eventually dry. Where with baby oil and salad oil, you'll actually have a spot on your canvas, if it happens to find its way on there, that will never dry, and that's not good either. So, and also any oils that dry also have to have flexibility, because without flexibility, you get cracking. So when the canvas is flexing, when the atmosphere is changing, you do get flex in your canvas, and you can't have the inconsistencies of your paint. How the different levels of the way that it dries, you can't have that happening on your surface, because then you'll get major cracking and problems with your paintings down the line. Within 5 years, who knows what's going to happen 250 years from now. Thanks for watching Baumann's Tricks and Helpful Hints. My name is Stefan Baumann. Be sure to go to my website, www.stefanbaumann.com, and there you can register for a free book. You can also get more information about other YouTubes that I have, and also my Patreon station at www.patreon. Look for Stefan Baumann. Until next time, thank you for tuning in to Baumann's Tricks and Helpful Hints, and you have a passionate day.